It's 66 AD, and Jerusalem is an absolute powder keg. You've got decades of resentment simmering under Roman rule, and it is just about to explode into one of the most vicious wars in ancient history. So let's break down the exact moments, the key decisions, and the acts of violence that lit the fuse for this massive revolt.
Okay, so to really get what's going on here, you've got to know who's who. On one side, you have the establishment, King Agrippa and the high priest Ananias. They are desperately trying to keep the peace. But on the other side, you've got the rebels, led by Eleazar. And here's a bit of family drama for you. Eleazar, the captain of the temple guard, is the high priest's own son. Right in the middle of all this is the Roman governor Florus, who's basically pushing everyone towards a fight. And then there are the Sicarii, a radical group of assassins who are about to change the entire game. Remember these groups, because their clash is what this story is all about.
So what kicks this whole thing off? Well, it starts with a familiar issue: taxes. The people of Jerusalem had just had enough, and they refused to pay tribute to Rome. King Agrippa, trying to act as the peacemaker, he steps in. He actually manages to get the missing money collected, and for a second, it really looks like disaster might be averted. But then Agrippa pushes his luck. He tells the people to just keep obeying the hated governor Florus, a guy they all see as totally corrupt. And that was a step too far. The crowd completely turns on him. They start throwing stones and literally run their own king out of the city. This wasn't just a protest anymore. This was a flat-out, violent rejection of anyone seen as cooperating with Rome. With the king gone, the rebellion picks up speed, fast. Two different events happen at almost the exact same time, and together they pretty much slam the door shut on any chance for peace. This is where the war really begins.
First, a group of rebels attacks the remote Roman fortress of Masada. They take it by trickery, kill the Roman soldiers stationed there, and claim it for the rebellion. This is a big deal. It's the first major military action, a direct, bloody challenge to the power of the Roman Empire.
At the very same time, back in Jerusalem, Eleazar makes a move that is, you could argue, even more provocative. He gets the temple priests to stop accepting sacrifices from any non-Jews. Now, this specifically targeted the offering that was made twice a day for the health of the Roman emperor, a tradition that symbolized a kind of coexistence. Ending that was a massive political and religious declaration of independence. You know, the historian Flavius Josephus, who was actually there for all of this, he saw this as the real turning point. Taking Masada was a military act, sure, but rejecting the emperor's sacrifice, that was a theological declaration of war. In his eyes, this was the moment the war truly began. It was an insult that Rome simply could not forgive. So with rebellion now out in the open, you might think Jerusalem would unite against Rome. But no. Instead, the city cracked apart and turned on itself. It descended into a brutal civil war. Picture this. Jerusalem is now its own battlefield. The city splits right down the middle. You've got the peace faction, made up of the elite and backed by King Agrippa's soldiers, holding the wealthy upper city. And then you've got the rebel faction, led by Eleazar, controlling the lower city and, this is crucial, the temple itself. That gave them huge popular support and religious authority. For a solid week, these two sides are just locked in a bloody stalemate. The streets of Jerusalem are a war zone. There's constant fighting with rocks, slings, and darts. But neither side could get the upper hand. So we have this deadlock. But that's all about to change. During a religious festival, a new, much more radical group enters the city, and their arrival is going to change everything. These were the Sicarii, the daggermen, and believe me, they lived up to the name. These guys weren't just soldiers, they were political assassins. They specialized in blending into crowds, taking out their targets, whether it was a Roman official or a Jewish collaborator, and then just disappearing. Their presence meant a new, far more ruthless phase of the fight was beginning. Bolstered by the Sicarii, the rebels launched their big offensive. They just overwhelm the peace faction soldiers and take the upper city. But they don't stop there. They burn the palaces of Ananias and Agrippa, the very symbols of the old order. And then they do something brilliant. They burn the public archives, destroying all records of debt. This was a masterstroke. It instantly won over the city's poor and basically ensured there was no turning back. With the city now almost entirely under their control, the rebels turned to mop up the last pockets of resistance. Their next target? The Antonia Fortress. Now, this wasn't just some building. It was the main Roman barracks in Jerusalem. It was the symbol, the very heart of the Roman occupation. Taking it would mean total victory inside the city.
And the assault was devastatingly quick. Just 2 days. Think about that. In 48 hours, the rebels took the Antonia fortress, killed every last Roman soldier inside, and burned it to the ground. The momentum was completely on their side now.
At this point, only one tiny pocket of resistance was left, the city's upper palace. This is where the last of Agrippa's troops and the leaders of the peace faction, including High Priest Ananias himself, had taken refuge. The rebellion had won. The very men who had tried so hard to prevent a war were now trapped, besieged by their own people in their own city.
So the rebels had won Jerusalem. They'd killed Roman soldiers, torched the symbols of Roman authority, and publicly rejected the emperor. And that leaves us with this question. After such a final, violent break, was there any path forward that didn't end with the legions of Rome marching on Jerusalem for revenge?